The late afternoon sunlight in Dallas draped across the glass facade of the Sola Vista Dallas Midtown Hotel, where a middle-aged man in a worn-out hoodie was walking in. His shirt was wrinkled, jeans faded, stubble unshaven. He rolled an old suitcase up to the front desk. Behind the counter, a young man with a name tag that read, "Kevin didn't bother to look up." "Sorry, we don't take locals." "Excuse me." The man tilted his head slightly. His voice wasn't angry, just surprised. "It's our policy. We don't accept people who live around here. I can pay. I'm a real guest." Kevin shrugged. "Policy is policy. I don't want to get written up. Just a few steps away." A young woman at the concierge desk quietly observed, worry flickering in her eyes. But she said nothing. Moments later, a man in a suit stepped out. His name was Wade, the hotel manager. He gave the guest a quick once-over, his gaze cold. As Kevin said, "We don't accommodate local residents. We've had a few incidents in the past. I'm not taking any chances." "You think I'll cause trouble just because I live in Dallas? It's not about you. It's the rule." The man nodded slightly. No arguing, no raised voice. He simply stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. No one knew this man was Daniel Harper, chairman of the Sola Vista hotel chain, the very man who built this brand with his own hands. He had just been denied service at a hotel bearing his name, simply because he didn't fit the mold. On his way out, he caught the eyes of the young woman at the concierge again, the only one who seemed visibly uncomfortable with the injustice. Her name was Rachel, and Daniel remembered her. A few minutes later, he stood leaning against a streetlight, staring back at the building he once took pride in, now a place he could barely recognize. A place that had once symbolized welcome, now putting up walls made of prejudice. A place created to help people feel like they belong, now turning into one where they were judged the moment they walked through the door. Daniel took out his phone and typed a message. Not to complain, not to retaliate, but simply to book a room at another hotel nearby. He needed one night to think, and tomorrow morning he would return, not as the CEO, but as a man applying for a job at the very hotel he founded. No one in the hotel knew that, and none of them knew that within just a few days, their lives and the culture of this place would never be the same again. The next morning, Dallas was unusually chilly. Daniel put on the same old hoodie, slipped on a pair of non-prescription glasses, and softened his authoritative tone to a plain, everyday voice. He returned to Sola Vista Dallas Midtown, this time no longer as a guest. He arrived as someone looking for a job. Crossing the quiet lobby just after the morning rush, Daniel walked up to the front desk. Kevin wasn't there. Instead, there was a woman in her late 30s, her tired face barely masked by pale makeup. Her name tag read, Linda. "Hi there. I was wondering, are you hiring?" he asked humbly. Linda didn't look away from her screen. "All applications are online. We don't take walk-ins. I don't have access to a computer right now. I was just hoping to speak to someone in person," Daniel said hesitantly, like someone hoping for a small chance. Linda let out a sigh. a sound that was both weary and cold, about to repeat her standard reply when a gentle female voice came from behind. "Are you asking about a job?" Daniel turned around. It was Rachel, the concierge from the night before, standing there, looking him straight in the eye. "Yes." He smiled faintly. "I've worked in hotels before, just looking for a stable position." Rachel glanced at Linda, then back at him. "Actually, we are short-staffed. 2 people quit last week. We really need help." Linda muttered something under her breath, but didn't object. Rachel gestured. "Come with me. I'll take you to meet Assistant Manager Eric. If you have experience, you might get hired on the spot." Daniel followed Rachel down a narrow hallway, passing by the employee break room where 2 young staff members sat glued to their phones. The coffee in the corner long gone cold. No one greeted them. No one cared. "We're short-staffed every night. The evening shift is exhausting," Rachel whispered. "Why is that? The pay isn't great. No one sticks around. And not everyone here gets treated with respect." That last sentence came out in a tone hard to pin down, part bitter, part matter-of-fact. They reached a small room with the door slightly ajar. Inside, a man in his late 20s was hunched over a keyboard, typing furiously. His hair was messy, shirt wrinkled. His name was Eric. Rachel tapped lightly. "Eric, someone's here asking about a front desk position." Eric looked up, his eyes glancing at Daniel for barely a second. "Got experience. I used to work front desk at a small hotel. I know check-ins, guest support, basic system operations." "Can you start today?" "Yes." No interview, no background check, just a few words, and the decision was made. Daniel kept a calm expression, but internally, he was already taking notes. Hiring process, virtually non-existent. Eric turned back to his screen. "Rachel, show him the procedures. Get him logged into the internal system later." Rachel nodded. "Follow me. I'll get you started." As they left the office, Daniel asked quietly, "Is it always this easy?" Rachel gave a half smile tinged with sadness. "Lately, yeah. No one stays long around here." That was the first time Daniel truly stepped into the inside world of a place he once thought he knew so well, but had long neglected. No more revenue reports. No more customer satisfaction metrics or emails from regional managers. For the first time in years, he crossed the threshold into where the real work and life of his employees happened. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing Daniel knew for sure: to fix a broken system, you have to first look it in the eye, through the lens of those it casts aside. Rachel brought Daniel back to the front desk, where she began walking him through the procedures step by step, from the outdated check-in software to the proper tone of voice for answering internal calls, gentle, professional, yet not overly formal. Daniel studied her more closely. There was something different about her, not just in how she worked, but in how she carried herself. She didn't rush. She didn't snap like Kevin. She wasn't tired and detached like Linda. She listened, explained, and at times quietly covered for others' mistakes, like when Kevin entered the wrong room code, and she silently corrected it without saying a word. "How long have you worked here?" Daniel asked during a lull at the front desk. "1.5 years. "Do you like it here?" She paused for a few seconds, then replied slowly, "I like the work, but not the way it's being run." Daniel gave a slight nod. He didn't press further. Sometimes the real answer lives in the silence. An internal call rang out. Rachel picked up the phone and smiled. "Good afternoon. This is the front desk at Solavista Hotel. How may I assist you?" Meanwhile, Daniel quietly observed the lobby guests coming and going. Some lined up for check-in, others inquiring about meeting rooms. He noticed everything looked like it was functioning, but it felt hollow. No one greeted guests with a genuine smile. No one noticed when a suitcase fell near the entrance. Not a single glance truly met another human being, except Rachel. She bent down to help a guest pick up spilled belongings. She gently apologized for a booking mistake she didn't make. She still held on to kindness within a system that had worn it out of everyone else. Daniel felt something stir in his chest. Gratitude and a fragile flicker of hope. He used to think that to change an organization, you needed budgets, policies, discipline. But maybe the first thing you needed was someone like Rachel, someone brave enough to do what's right, even when no one's watching, brave enough to speak the truth, even knowing it could cost her, brave enough to believe that customer service isn't procedure, it's dignity in action. Daniel looked at her not with the eyes of a CEO evaluating an employee, but as someone who had just spotted a light flickering inside a dark room. And he thought to himself, if I can put her in the right place, she just might be able to save this whole place. Rachel hung up the phone, turned back to him, and smiled. A guest just called. Their bathroom door is stuck. Kevin says maintenance isn't here. But is that true? Daniel asked. She shook her head gently. Carl, the maintenance guy, is in the back room, but Kevin doesn't like calling him. People around here have learned to avoid trouble. Daniel nodded slowly. Another piece of the puzzle. Another sad truth. And he began to see the problem wasn't just with the people, it was the culture. A culture of avoiding responsibility that had spread for far too long. Rachel looked up, her eyes meeting his. Are you planning to stay long or just working here for a few days? Daniel looked her straight in the eye, no pretending, no deflection. If there's a good enough reason, I'll stay. She gave a soft nod. I hope you do. This place needs people who actually work, not just warm bodies to fill the gaps. He didn't answer right away, just smiled the kind of smile someone has when they spot a green sprout breaking through old cement. Not even a full day into the job, and Daniel could already feel what no HR report ever showed. This place was running on autopilot, not on heart. Kevin, the one who'd turned Daniel away the night before, returned for the afternoon shift. His demeanor hadn't changed, hands stuffed in his pockets, one wireless earbud in, and his eyes never lingering on a guest's face for more than 3 seconds. An elderly man approached and asked, I'd like to switch to a room near the elevator. My legs aren't too good. Kevin glanced at the screen without looking up. Once it's booked, it can't be changed. But that's the policy. Daniel stood nearby, witnessing it all. No compassion, no effort to help. Just a quick shutdown to avoid hassle. Rachel quickly stepped in, gently took over the conversation, checked the system, and within 3 minutes, arranged a new room closer to the elevator. Kevin muttered, "If you've got the time, might as well do my job too." Rachel didn't respond, but Daniel remembered every word, every tone. After the guest walked away, Daniel asked quietly, "Don't you feel guilty lying about the policy?" Kevin shrugged, not even turning around. "I don't get paid to argue with guests." He wasn't entirely wrong, but he wasn't right either. Linda was different. She wasn't rude, but she wasn't warm either. She was the kind of employee who did just enough and nothing more. Daniel noticed how she shut down guest requests with lines like, "That's not my department. Ask the concierge, I don't know. Booked online. You'll have to check it yourself." There was no major offense, just the slow fading of the spirit of service. She had been a long-time employee. Daniel had learned that during their conversation that morning. And perhaps that's what made her exhaustion even more dangerous. Linda wasn't sabotaging anything, but she wasn't building anything either. And then there was the third person, someone Daniel hadn't seen all day, Wade, the hotel manager. He had his own private office, door always shut, a dim yellow light glowing beneath the crack. He only emerged for serious matters like a guest complaint or a sudden resignation, uttering a few vague phrases before vanishing again, as if he had never been there. That afternoon, Rachel whispered to Daniel, "You know the last time Wade held a staff meeting?" Daniel shook his head. 9 months ago. I remember because it was my birthday, and he got my name wrong in the meeting. The line sounded light, almost like a joke, but it struck like a wake-up bell. Daniel took a step back, as if to view the whole canvas. Kevin, lazy, indifferent, doing everything he could to dodge responsibility. Linda, drained, out of faith, working simply because she had nowhere else to go. Wade, missing in action, a man who should have been the pillar, now just a shadow in the background. And then there was Rachel, a small green sprout, still trying to grow in cracked, dry earth. Daniel understood the sickness here wasn't about skill. It was the sickness of resignation, a culture that had forgotten why it existed. And the most dangerous part was that it was spreading like a silent virus, killing the spirit of service bit by bit. Daniel took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't act just yet, but he also knew doing nothing was the same as helping it spread. Starting tomorrow, he would begin to uncover just how deep the infection had gone, so when the time came, he could rip it out at the roots. The afternoon passed with a mechanical rhythm, lifeless and dull, until a loud argument broke out near the elevators. Daniel and Rachel turned their heads at the same time. A middle-aged man in a suit, face flushed red, hand gripping his rolling suitcase, was locked in a confrontation with Kevin. "I already told you," Kevin emphasized. "There are no rooms available. You put me in a room with a broken air conditioner. I have an online meeting tonight. I'm requesting a room change. There's nothing I can do. We're full. Then call maintenance to fix it. Maintenance isn't here. Daniel stepped forward, about to intervene, but Rachel gently touched his arm, whispering, "Carl is still in the maintenance room. I saw him earlier." Daniel frowned. Kevin had just lied. A minute later, right on cue, Wade emerged from his office, only appearing when a situation was big enough to be escalated up the chain. His expression shifted instantly from irritation to courtesy, but it was too forced to be convincing. "Hello? What seems to be the issue here?" The guest turned to him, voice full of frustration. "Your employee refuses to move me to another room. My air conditioning isn't working at all." Wade bowed his head slightly. "I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience, sir. Unfortunately, there's nothing more we can do at the moment." Daniel stood still, his eyes fixed on Wade. Not a single sincere question, not one call to confirm with maintenance, not a single proactive step to resolve the issue, just an empty apology and a denial wrapped in politeness. The guest shook his head, clearly disillusioned. "I'll be calling corporate. I'm not the kind of guest you can just brush off." Wade kept smiling. "You're within your rights to do that, sir." The guest walked away, dragging his heavy suitcase toward the elevator. No one stopped him. Wade turned to Kevin, his voice flat. "Next time, don't argue. Just say it's being handled. No need to win the conversation." Kevin nodded without care, then turned back to his computer screen as if nothing had happened. But Daniel knew. This was the critical piece he'd been waiting for. Wade wasn't indifferent. Wade was capable of handling things, but he chose not to, because in his mind, guests were no longer people to serve. They were just inconveniences to be moved along quickly. Daniel stepped closer to Rachel. "She was right," he said quietly. Rachel tilted her head. "What was?" "You were right yesterday," Daniel said. "There's no official policy here against serving local guests, but they've turned it into an unspoken rule." She nodded slightly. "I tried speaking up once, but around here, people don't like anyone who stirs things up." Daniel looked straight into her eyes. "Then maybe it's time to stir things up." She froze, and for some reason, the look in the eyes of the man in the hoodie standing beside her at that moment no longer resembled a new hire. It looked like someone getting ready to rewrite every old rule at its root. The next morning, Daniel arrived early. He wasn't in uniform because the hotel didn't issue one for temporary front desk staff. All he had was a plain name tag, and the mildly surprised glances of a few co-workers when they saw him already behind the desk at 6:30 a.m. "You're here early?" Rachel asked, powering on her screen. Daniel smiled. "Old habit. I like seeing this place before it wakes up." But truthfully, he had another goal. When Rachel was called away to assist a VIP guest on the executive floor, Daniel volunteered to check out the support areas as part of familiarizing himself with the workplace. No one questioned it, because no one really paid attention. He quietly left the front desk and ventured deep into the staff corridors. Heavy metal doors, faded policy posters, flickering fluorescent lights. This was the world guests never saw. Near the laundry room, Daniel came across a woman in her early 40s, her hair tied up neatly, her uniform sleeves worn thin at the cuffs. She leaned against a housekeeping cart, rubbing her forehead, her exhaustion plain to see. "Hi, I just started at the front desk. Busy shift today?" Daniel asked casually. She looked up, slightly surprised that someone was even speaking to her. "You're new?" "Yeah, today's like any other. 16 rooms. Just me." Daniel frowned. "You're handling a whole floor alone. Who else is left? They cut 2 people last month. Now when someone quits, the rest of us just have to stretch." Does no one raise complaints to whom management avoids us? And even if you say something, all you get is, "Just hang in there. The guests haven't complained yet." She let out a dry chuckle, but her eyes held no humor. Daniel gave a gentle nod, thanked her, and continued walking, his heart heavy. This was no longer a matter of procedures. This was exhaustion, plain and deep. He stopped by the employee break room. Inside, 3 people sat quietly eating takeout meals, no one talking, no laughter, just the slow sounds of chewing and the low, dull hum of an old ceiling fan. One young staff member yawned while texting. Another leaned back in a chair, staring blankly at the wall. This didn't feel like a break. It felt like a brief recovery between 2 battles no one even remembered why they were fighting. Daniel didn't linger. He moved on toward the maintenance area, hoping to find another missing piece. The technical room lay behind a chipped, grey-painted door. Inside, a man in his early 50s sat at a wooden bench, holding a broken chair leg, welding and mumbling to himself. His name tag read Carl. Daniel knocked lightly. "Hi, I'm new at the front desk. Just wanted to say hello." Carl looked up and gave a slight nod. "You've got the wrong door. Front desk folks don't usually come down here. I just wanted to understand how things work. There was a broken AC issue yesterday, and Kevin said you weren't around." Carl cut in, his voice tinged with frustration. "I'm always here except for lunch. The problem is, they're too lazy to call. They'd rather let the guest get mad and push it on management than bother contacting maintenance." Daniel nodded. "Could you have fixed that AC?" "Easy fix. Just needed a new remote. But nobody told me." Carl set down the chair leg and looked Daniel square in the eye for the first time. Something sparked behind them. "Those folks upstairs don't get it. Maintenance isn't magic. You want something fixed, you have to tell me. So, you're often just left out." "Yeah, like I'm the extra part nobody needs." That line hit Daniel straight in the chest. The extra part. A man who had clearly been around a long time, knew the system, was willing to repair and help, yet was treated like a shadow. Daniel thanked Carl and stepped back into the hallway. There, in the quiet, he paused and silently jotted something in the small notebook he kept in his pocket. The rot isn't in the little mistakes. It's in how people get used to them and stop trying to fix them. That afternoon, Daniel stood quietly behind the front desk, his eyes fixed on the manager's office, the familiar door with its dim yellow light spilling from beneath. Wade had entered that room in the morning and barely come out since. Daniel wasn't willing to wait any longer. He had seen enough. He had heard enough. And he understood enough. He walked toward the office, didn't knock, didn't hesitate, just pushed the door open calmly but firmly, then closed it behind him. Wade looked up, his brows tightening. "What are you doing?" "This area is for management staff only." "I know," Daniel replied, his gaze steady. "Then you should head back to the desk." "No, I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to talk about how you're running this place." Wade leaned on the desk, his expression shifting from annoyance to caution. "Who do you think you are? A temp front desk clerk with a superiority complex?" Daniel took a step forward. "I'm Daniel Harper." Wade froze. "What?" "Chairman of Solavista Hotels. The one who built this chain from 4 to 10 properties. And the man who was refused service at this very hotel because of a so-called no locals policy that I never approved, signed, or authorized." The air in the room seemed to stop moving. Wade opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes darted from the scruffy beard to the worn-out hoodie, then to the quiet, unshakable calm in the man standing before him. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He spoke slowly, clearly, his words sharp as blades. "I've been here for 2 days, working, observing, listening. And what did I see? Front desk staff indifferent, argumentative, dishonest, maintenance left out of the loop, ignored, housekeeping exhausted from staff cuts, and management hiding in a locked office, dodging responsibility, offering polite excuses instead of fixing the roots. What I'm looking at isn't just a broken system. I'm looking at a culture rotting from the inside out." Wade stammered, "I didn't know. I didn't think." "Exactly." Daniel cut in. "You didn't think because you didn't have to. All you cared about was keeping things quiet, so the numbers in your reports would look fine. But the truth is, you are killing this place day by day." The air grew thick. Wade swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "If I had known you were the chairman, I would have treated me differently." Daniel cut him off. His gaze sharpened. "So if I wasn't the chairman, I deserved to be treated like trash. You just said it all." Wade trembled, not out of fear of losing his job, but because his mask had been torn off. Daniel stepped back, his voice firm and final. "I don't need to hear anything else. You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your things. Be out of this hotel before the clock hits 6. Wade hadn't even gotten out of his chair before Daniel turned and opened the door. And the moment he stepped out, the entire lobby fell silent. Rachel stood near the front desk, her eyes wide in disbelief. Linda looked up from behind, her expression caught somewhere between shock and suspicion. Carl, down the hallway near maintenance, had stopped in his tracks, still holding a wrench in one hand. Daniel took a deep breath and spoke for the first time with the voice of a true leader. "Wade is no longer the manager of this hotel, and starting today, We begin again. No one reacted right away, but no one objected either. Daniel stepped into the center of the lobby and turned to face them all. The discriminatory policy against local guests is abolished. The housekeeping team will receive additional staffing. Maintenance issues will be reported directly, no more middlemen, and those who truly put in the effort will be recognized and given the opportunity they deserve. He turned to Rachel, his gaze softening. You were the only one who dared to speak the truth while others stayed silent. Starting today, you're the new assistant manager. Rachel stood frozen. Are you sure? I'm not choosing you for experience. I'm choosing you because you still have heart. And right now, that's what this place needs more than anything. She nodded slowly, not out of shock, but because for the first time in 18 months of working there, she was witnessing justice. The air in the lobby seemed to pause after Daniel's announcement. Rachel remained still for a moment, her fingers resting on the edge of the front desk, as if trying to confirm whether what she'd just heard had truly happened. Daniel nodded at her again, his voice low but steady. I need someone who doesn't just know the procedures, but who's willing to stand for what's right, even when no one else will. You did that, and from now on, you won't have to do it alone. At that moment, from the maintenance corridor, Carl, the quiet but steadfast man, stepped out, still holding a screwdriver in his hand. He spoke, his voice raspy but firm. I've been retired for years, and I've never seen anyone come back to fix things from the core like this. And I've never seen a manager call out the truth right in the middle of the lobby. I'm staying. A few other staff members gave subtle nods. Even Linda, still wearing her cautious expression, slowly rose from behind the printer, her eyes seeming to say, I'm watching to see if you really mean it. Daniel walked slowly toward the front desk, where Kevin stood frozen still, trying to process what was happening. He started to speak. I didn't know you were the chairman. I wasn't trying to. Daniel raised a hand, cutting him off. His voice was no longer angry, just clear and decisive. I'm not firing you. Not because you've earned the right to stay, but because I want to see if you're willing to change. Starting today, you'll work directly under Assistant Manager Rachel. All guest feedback will be documented. Every action will have consequences, and every genuine effort will be acknowledged. Kevin lowered his head. He didn't protest. Maybe for the first time, he understood that a front desk uniform couldn't cover the truth, only actions could. Daniel turned to the rest of the staff, who were all watching him now. He didn't need a microphone. He didn't need a fiery speech. He just said what truly needed to be heard. I'm not here on a surprise inspection. I'm staying because I believe this place still has something worth saving, but I can't do it alone. If you want change, I'll walk with you. If not, then don't stand in the way. A beat of silence. Then Rachel stepped forward and stood beside Daniel for the first time in her new role. She had no grand announcement. She simply looked at everyone one by one and said, I'm not perfect, but I believe this. If we start working like people who care, instead of people just trying to survive this place, we'll come back to life. The murmurs slowly faded, and the feeling in the room began to shift. not with loud cheers or applause, but with something far more precious in a place long buried in fatigue, a cautious but real sense of hope. Daniel turned to Rachel. "Starting today, everything will be handled together. No one has to carry the weight alone anymore." She nodded. This time, she nodded firmly, like a promise. And so, in what once seemed like an ordinary hotel lobby, a new culture laid its very first brick. The next day, the Sola Vista Dallas Midtown Hotel was no longer the place Daniel had walked into in silence. He arrived early, dressed in a simple button-down shirt, name tag hanging plainly from his neck, still looking humble, but with a different gaze. He was no longer the observer. Now, he was the guide. Rachel began her first official day as assistant manager. She came in earlier than usual, bringing her own laptop, a stack of sticky notes, and a rough draft of a game plan. No one asked her to do that. She just genuinely wanted things to change. That morning, Rachel called a small meeting right at the front desk. No formal agenda, no email invites, just an honest conversation with Linda, Kevin, and a new trainee named Manny. She clearly laid out new expectations, promised transparency in how guest feedback would be handled, and most importantly pledged that anyone who did well would be properly recognized. Linda nodded silently. Kevin still didn't know how much of it he could trust, but Daniel could tell he was listening. And that was something Kevin had never done before. Meanwhile, down in the maintenance basement, Carl had already started compiling a list of overdue repairs. The broken air conditioner from 2 days ago fixed in just 20 minutes. When Daniel walked in, Carl simply said, "If we don't start it ourselves, no one else will." Then turned back to his whiteboard, marking resolved in rough but determined handwriting. Housekeeping shifts were adjusted. Rachel worked with HR to urgently bring in 2 part-time hires to lighten the load temporarily. Laughter could now be heard here and there in the back corridors, not loud, but enough to signal that change was happening. Daniel didn't stay on the sidelines. He went into the staff kitchen and tried the employee meals, cold, bland, lacking nutrition. He checked the hot water system on the 9th floor, a long-standing guest complaint that had been ignored because it wasn't urgent. He listened, he took notes, and he told each person he met, "I see it, I'll take care of it." Each time he did. Daniel knew he was laying brick by brick what he called organizational trust. But by the end of the 3rd day, when everything started running just a bit more smoothly, Rachel pulled him aside to the back veranda of the hotel, where there was a long bench for staff to take short breaks. She handed him a cup of water, looked him straight in the eye, and asked, "I know people are starting to feel hope, but do you think it'll last?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he answered truthfully, "Changing behavior is easy. Changing habits is harder. But changing belief is the longest journey of all. If we stop at fixing procedures, we'll slide right back into the old ways. And if we dare to ask what makes people not want to stay, that's when we truly begin to rebuild this place." Rachel nodded. "Then we're going to keep going, right? We will," Daniel replied. "But it's not enough yet. There's still something you haven't asked." She tilted her head, curious. Daniel looked out at the pale grey sky behind the building, then said, "Do you know why people stay exhausted for so long, yet don't walk away? It's not because they're paid well. It's because, somewhere deep down, they once believed this place was worth holding on to. If we can call that belief back, they won't need a great boss. They'll rise on their own." Just then, in the break room, Linda was pouring coffee for a new staff member. In the maintenance kitchen, Carl was reorganizing repair tools into tidy trays, something he'd never done before. Rachel saw all of it, and she knew Daniel was right. A true transformation doesn't begin with orders. It begins in the way people look at each other when they still want to believe. On the afternoon of the fourth day, rain drizzled over Dallas like a soft tapping against the windows of the upper floors. Daniel stepped into the staff break room, no knocking, no announcement. Just one quiet step into a space that no performance report could ever fully describe. In the corner, Linda sat alone, holding a cup of coffee long gone cold. The harsh fluorescent light cast shadows on her tired face, accentuating the lines that time and disappointment had carved together. Daniel sat across from her, saying nothing. He waited patiently for her to speak first. Eventually, Linda lifted her eyes. Her voice came out low, like a confession. "I've worked here nearly 7 years. I've seen 3 different managers, dozens of shift changes, and more promises than I can count. And I've learned not to trust anything that comes too suddenly." Daniel nodded gently. "I understand. I'm not against you," she continued. "But I've seen people like you before, strong, passionate, and then they leave. And people like us, we're still here, still patching up the system with the last scraps of our patience." He asked quietly, "What made you stay?" Linda fell silent for a long moment. Then she spoke like someone peeling away a shell that had hardened over many years. "Because I didn't have a better option. Because this was the place I once thought I could belong to. But it never chose to belong to me." Daniel exhaled. That sentence was the key. The problem was never low KPIs, long shifts, or broken air conditioners. It was the feeling I no longer matter. Daniel leaned forward. "If that could change not just on paper, but in the way people are truly treated, would you be willing to try again?" Leader looked at him, eyes guarded, then softened. "I used to want to believe, but I'm tired." Daniel didn't push. He simply asked, "What do you think makes someone want to stay, not because they have to, but because they want to?" Linda gave a dry, almost weary smile. "Respect and a living wage. No one wants to feel like a machine that can be replaced with someone cheaper." A simple answer. No fluff, but painfully true. Daniel nodded. "Thank you. I needed to hear that from someone who's lost hope, because if I can win you back, I'll know I'm on the right path." Linda set her coffee cup down and stood. "I'm not promising to change overnight, but if you're still here next week, I'll start to believe bit by bit." She walked away, leaving Daniel alone in the softly lit break room. He opened his notebook and jotted down a single line. People don't leave because they're tired. They leave when their effort stops meaning anything. Outside, the rain continued falling gently. But within Daniel, a decision had solidified. If he was going to fix the system, he had to start by giving every person one thing back: the sense that they mattered. That evening, Daniel didn't return to the off-site hotel. He went back to the office on the 11th floor, the room that had once belonged to Wade, now cleared of all his old files. He turned on the lights, opened his laptop, and began reviewing every payroll record, every staffing file, every fixed overhead cost. The numbers didn't lie. The turnover rate in the past 3 months was 43%, double the industry average. Daniel stayed there until midnight, and under the cool blue glow of the screen, he made a decision: raise wages, not for upper management, but for the very people holding this place together by their bare hands. The next morning, Daniel called in Rachel and Eric, the last remaining assistant manager from the original team, for a meeting. No PowerPoint, no flashy charts, just a single sheet of paper with 3 bold lines: raise base pay for front desk, housekeeping, and maintenance. Establish an internal bonus fund based on guest feedback. Launch the Real Commitment, Real Growth program. Eric, who had been mostly silent since Daniel's arrival, was the first to frown. This is going to cost a lot. Are you sure? Daniel nodded. Not doing it will cost more. It'll cost us trust, staff, and the future of this brand. Rachel looked at the sheet. Her eyes didn't show shock, but something deeper: hope backed by reason. If we really do this, it'll be the reason someone doesn't give up halfway through a shift. Daniel smiled. We don't need to keep people here with contracts. We keep them by making them feel they're worth staying. The announcement was pinned to the staff bulletin board later that afternoon. No fanfare, no system-wide email, just a plain printout. But it sent a quiet buzz rippling through the break room. Starting next week, base pay will increase by 15%. Guest service bonuses up to $200 a month. Internal promotions to be considered starting next month. Carl read it, set the paper down, looked at Daniel, and gave him a light pat on the shoulder. I was planning to retire at the end of this month. Now, I might fix a few more air conditioners. Linda, when handed her afternoon shift assignment, didn't sigh like she usually did. She simply nodded quietly, then walked off, holding her timecard clipboard a little tighter, as if it had suddenly become worth something again. Kevin was quieter than usual, but as the shift ended, he approached Rachel and said softly, I know I've been bad before, but if someone's willing to teach me again, I'll take it seriously. Rachel nodded. Second chances were something this place forgot. Now, we're learning them again. That weekend, Daniel didn't meet with the board of directors. He spent Saturday wiping down tables at the breakfast buffet and helping Carl replace a light bulb on the 7th floor. And when a little girl walked by, tugged at her mum's hand and asked, "Is that man the janitor?" Daniel simply smiled, saying nothing, because that was exactly what he wanted, to be a real part of this place, not just a name printed on a business license. That afternoon, Daniel gathered all the staff in the ground floor conference room. No podium, no stage lights, just him, standing in the middle of them, with bare hands and eyes that looked straight through. "I'm not going to promise it'll be easy. I'm not going to promise you won't get tired. But I promise this, if you're willing to show up and try, this place will never leave you behind again." Silence, then nods, slow, certain. And in that moment, Sola Vista Dallas Midtown wasn't just a hotel. It became a promise that when people are trusted, they create the impossible. 3 weeks after the change, the Sola Vista Dallas Midtown began to show signs of something unusual. Not the kind of thing visible from the outside. There were no flashy new banners, no dazzling slogans, just small things, quiet things starting to shift everywhere. Guests entering the lobby were greeted by eyes that actually listened, not scripted lines on repeat. Housekeepers began smiling at each other in the hallways instead of exchanging tired, empty glances. Maintenance was no longer forgotten. It had become the place where problems were solved the moment they appeared. Rachel, now officially assistant manager, held her first interdepartmental meeting without needing a reminder. She printed weekly guest feedback reports broken down by shift and pinned them to the staff board, not to punish, but so everyone could see. When you do well, someone notices. And when you slip up, someone listens. Linda still didn't smile much, but she started reminding new staff how to properly place guest amenities, as if she was beginning to remember why she once loved this job. Carl brought back an old friend to work part-time, something he hadn't done in over 3 years. And Kevin, once. Daniel spotted him helping an elderly guest carry luggage to their car, even though it wasn't his job. Kevin didn't know anyone was watching, but Daniel saw, and he smiled, not because of the action, but because the conscience was coming back. On a quiet Sunday night, Daniel climbed to the rooftop of the hotel, the same spot where he once stood beside his father, looking over the first blueprints for the Sola Vista chain. The night breeze brushed through his hair. Below, the lights of Dallas drifted by, quiet and constant, like time that never stops flowing. Rachel arrived, holding 2 cups of hot tea. "Tomorrow, the new payroll takes effect," she said. Daniel nodded, accepting the cup. "Do you think they'll stay?" Rachel paused, then answered softly, "They'll try. And this time, they know someone's staying with them." Daniel smiled faintly. "I used to think building a hotel empire took technology, marketing, and strategy. But after everything, the only thing I needed to get right was people." He gazed into the distance at the tall, glowing hotels shimmering across the skyline, each like a shiny invitation. And he understood Sola Vista might never be the flashiest place, but from now on, it would be the kindest. Not because of VIPs, not because of 5-star reviews, but because the people once overlooked were now rising together and rewriting their own worth. Dan, do you know what makes an employee stay for the long haul? Not their starting salary, not the benefits package, but the feeling that they're heard, valued, and have a place to belong. And sometimes Just one person brave enough to return from within is all it takes to make the entire system begin to heal.